obviously, whenever, and we'll just start with the Clemson SMU game since we're going to be sitting here talking about it anyway. S- SMU just came out and just crapped down the back of their leg to start this game. I mean, it was rough going to start this thing. Pretty much the worst possible way to start a football game. Um, Turnovers. Clemson is just, I think Clemson had like 180 yards in the first quarter. Just absolutely taking care of business was Clemson. And the part that really stuck out to me, the mistakes, the mistakes were bad by SMU, and the quarterback was, I think, a little flustered. Obviously, to start off, maybe a little nervous in that situation. Probably the biggest game he's ever played in his career, I'm sure. Um, but what was sticking out to me was the fact that Clemson's defensive line was just blowing up the offensive line of SMU. They were just blowing those dudes all. I mean, bad. It was bad. Um, as the game went on, though, SMU kind of adapted, right? Clemson's got the big lead going into halftime, and SMU just kept chopping. It just kept chopping, kept chopping, and worked their way all the way back into this game. And with that being said, early on, I was like, okay, well, Clemson's going to absolutely just boat race them. And then SMU is going to be all the way out of the 12 team. They're not going to have any argument to be in. But the way the game finished, do you feel like SMU should be in the 12 team college football playoff?
Yeah, absolutely. If they're not in, what are we doing here? If they're not in, the college football playoff is a joke, and people will not watch it because of that. People who aren't necessarily SMU fans wouldn't watch it because of that. I've got them in. I've got them in over Bama. That was a hell of a comeback, a hell of a performance. I was already, banking on Clemson winning. I was banking on Clemson winning when they were up 17-0. I thought, man, this game's going, worse than I thought it would. I figured it would be a close game, but I had Clemson winning, and lo and behold, in the fourth quarter, SMU just storms back and makes this thing an absolute ACC Championship classic. That's really what that was. That was some really good football. A great way to end the night. For sure, and I thought both teams played really well. I was impressed with Clemson. They left some points out there late for sure. Had some drives that got stalled, but that was a credit to SMU's defense and a face mask that didn't get called. That was pretty obvious. But I thought that the reffing was kind of went both ways there. It was bad on both sides
I
for
saw
that
missed
game at
calls in
least.
every single game I watched this
Yeah.
weekend. I really did. I mean, every single game I saw missed calls, no doubt. Look, Adam Randall is a guy that is probably not going to get talked about a ton in this situation for Clemson, but he's the guy who returns that kickoff. Guys, that was his first kickoff return of the year.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you can't make this shit up. And then obviously you hit the pass to Antonio Williams. The kicker has obviously went through some crap this year. They've had like 5 kicks blocked. Clemson has this year. So that wasn't a gimme. Obviously, a long field goal that gets in there. He maybe had 2 or 3 yards to spare for that one. So absolutely dramatic ending there. And I agree with you 100%. SMU's got to be in the college football playoff at this point. I get it. The whole, this college football playoff committee, they can go pull stats and cherry pick stats all they want to. I mean, they can explain their way around just about any decision. But this just made it a lot harder to explain around this situation. Whenever it comes down to the very last second of the game. Congratulations to Clemson. Big win there, obviously. First time going to the playoffs since 2020. That's a big deal. And this is going to be the 12-team version of that. And if this weekend was any indication of what we're going to see through the month of December, everybody just needs to buckle their ass up because there ain't no telling what's going to happen. There is absolutely no telling. We've got tons and tons to talk about. I saw comment in the comment section. I just wanted to kind of highlight this because I agree with this almost completely. Benton Birds, thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. The only thing I don't agree with is Down at the bottom, SMU 11, Clemson 12. I think that'll be flip flopped. I believe SMU will probably be 12, right? And then Clemson 11, and obviously Arizona State jumping up into that. Um, Arizona State just, golly, they benefited so much from this situation. Everything is going Arizona State's way right this second, including on and off the football field, on other football fields, I guess you could say. So yeah, absolutely. I was just reading through some of these. Nature Boy, AIN. Oh,
Sorry, I messed that up.
Nature Boy AIN 24. My CFP rankings: Texas, PSU have no top 25 wins. How about that? We're going to get to Texas and Georgia here in just a minute. Don't you worry about that.
Well, neither does SMU. Let's kind of
Neither
talk
does
about that
SMU.
too.
That's very true. That's very true. But Penn State doesn't have a bunch of top 25 wins. You know what I mean? Which
Yeah.
he said that. I'm just saying that it's almost irrelevant at this point. I mean, we know what the college football playoff committee, what they think of these teams generally. We don't know exactly what number they're in, but I think it's pretty close to what we're predicting. Let's see.
And I'm going to throw this up, Mark. We didn't have a chance to talk about this because of the technical issues we had before the show started, but I did go through and give a projected ranking 1 through 25 based off of the CFP's rankings, and based off of the wins and losses here from championship weekend. But we can look at it real quick. I mean, I know everybody's interested in the top 12. I totally get that. But for bowl games, and we're not ready to talk about the bowl games outside of the playoffs. So that's those conversations will happen probably next week at some point, maybe tomorrow a little bit in our CFP ranking reaction show. But I've got just like you said, Mark. I've got Clemson at 11. I've got SMU at 12. And then for 6 through 10, and again, this is based off of the CFP rankings. And then, the wins and losses here, Boise State moves up a little bit to 9, and then Arizona State at 10 there. Indiana pretty much stays in the same spot behind Ohio State, Tennessee, and or Ohio State and Tennessee. And then I'm not sure what they're going to do with Texas and Notre Dame. My understanding is that the committee is not going to punish teams for playing in their conference championships. So in that case, Texas was ranked ahead of Notre Dame before playing in their championship, lost to the number 2 team in overtime. I don't see Texas sliding behind Notre Dame because of that, and I don't see
Texas
Penn State
ends up at the 5 spot.
Well, they end up at 4, but in the actual seeding and in the bracket, which I'll put on your screen next, Penn State I've got at 5, and then Texas at 6. And then Notre Dame would host at 7, and then Ohio State hosting Tennessee, which is going to be a great game. I think 8 and 9 right there is pretty much a done deal.
So
I don't see that
feel like
changing at
Notre
all.
Dame slides on back. I'm here, and I don't know. You may be correct because originally that's what I had wrote down, Mason, and then I kind of went back and I rewrote it at Notre Dame at number 5, just because of everything else I was hearing, just listening to people reacting to some of these games. But I don't know how much thought anybody's really put into that. We know for a fact that any teams that didn't play this Saturday, the order of those teams is not going to change. We know that. But we don't know for a fact that one of those teams, like you're saying, Notre Dame, couldn't be kicked down the rung a couple of steps, because of teams that were very competitive in conference championship, games, such as Texas and Penn State. I thought both of those teams, specifically Penn State, I thought Penn State played really well today. I don't think Texas played all that well, to be honest with you. But we're going to get to those games here in a minute. So I'm not totally ruling out what you're saying. I'm thinking that that's a pretty good possibility as well. So that's kind of an interesting point there, and obviously is going to change the matchups as we go into this first round. Let's see. So 5, 6, 7, 8. those are all home, right? And then 9, 10, 11, 12,
That's right.
um, those are all going to be the road teams
And
there. So you're going to see
interesting matchup,
SMU.
though. I mean, we've hinted at this, and now it's looking like it's a real possibility. But Notre Dame hosting the in-state team Indiana, um, I think that's going to be a really big game
We
for
got
the
to see
state of
that.
Indiana. Yeah, that has to be the matchup, right? And then I like if everything falls this way, and I really think it will. I really feel pretty confident in this little breakdown here. Um, maybe 4 and 3 get swapped. I don't know. Arizona State had a really good showing. I don't know if they did enough to get above Boise State. I really don't think Clemson did enough to get into the top 4 because they have 3 losses. But I've heard a lot of lobbying for Arizona State over Boise, and that was a lot. A lot of that talk happened before the ACC Championship game, and now that SMU's gone down, I think people are going to be satisfied with having the Big 12 champion in the top 4 getting a bye, and Boise State getting a bye as well. But I like the diversity here. You're seeing a lot. You're not seeing any conference on conference crime here, right? And no matchups are really going to be repeated, except for maybe Ohio State and Oregon potentially in the quarterfinals there. And then you wouldn't see Texas and Georgia again for the 3rd time, which has to be the first time that's ever happened in a season. You wouldn't see that again until the semis, based off of this bracket potentially. I mean, that's assuming that those teams win those games to get to that point. And then Penn State and Oregon, you wouldn't see again until the semis as well. So I think this would be a nice way for the committee to get some conference versus conference games, not have them super lopsided. You don't want to see all three SEC teams on the same side of the bracket. That just wouldn't make a ton of sense. Same thing with the Big Ten. We don't want to see a rematch of SMU versus Clemson. That wouldn't happen until the championship game potentially. So I don't know. I like the 12-team playoff and all. I just worry sometimes that some of these games we're going to see repeated over and over again. And if the bracket falls this way, like I said, we wouldn't see a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And one interesting point that I see in the comment section, and something that I certainly was thinking about today, and we've kind of talked about leading up to all this, is those teams that are going to host that first round, which I believe that's December 20th and 21st. Those are going to be really, really exciting. But just looking at this, so you would obviously have Texas hosting, right?
Mhm.
Penn State hosting. That's a cold weather area right there. That's going to be a cold, cold playoff game. Notre Dame, very cold, right? Ohio State's going to be very cold. Tennessee, Ohio State, by the way, that's not even. I hope that is what happens here. I would absolutely love to see that. Um, I'm sure all of y'all would love to see it. Ohio State has historically not been very good against SEC teams record wise, and that would be a very interesting matchup. I feel like a defensive struggle more than likely. Probably something like what we saw with Georgia and Texas today. Speaking of which, we can bring this bracket back up as we kind of go through here if we feel like it or whatever. Um, but let's react to some more of these games, and I really really just want to get to the Georgia Texas game, and then we'll go Big Ten championship. We'll talk some Arizona Iowa State. We're going to talk Boise State because I was really entertained by the Boise State game as well. And felt like I learned something about just about all of these teams. I feel like I definitely learned something about all of these teams. Everybody was tested hardcore. So I just this is when you learn the most about teams, is when the bullets are flying, no doubt about it. Georgia defeats Texas in overtime, 22-19 in Atlanta. Um, Look, Texas comes out and throws an interception on the very first drive, and it was like deja vu, right? And in a lot of ways, Mason, this game was deja vu. because just looking at some of the comparisons, the first game that we saw in Austin earlier in the regular season, Georgia sacked the quarterback 7 times. Well, they sacked the quarterback 6 times tonight. It was a lot of the same stuff. We have to come to the realization everybody was on Texas again here, and and there's no shame in that or anything like that. But Texas can't block Georgia, and therefore all the other advantages that Texas have are null and void in this matchup. They've got the better wide receivers. They've got the better skill players in general. They probably, at times this year, have had a better run game. They didn't today, and that was another reason that Georgia won this game. Georgia was able to run the football, but Texas cannot block Georgia. That offensive line from Texas, we talked about it coming into the season. We said, wow, this is a really good group of guys. How does it convert to SEC play versus coming out of the Big 12? And we've seen Texas play 2 tough games this year, both of them against Georgia, and the offense looked terrible. Now, with that being said, Texas has got a really good defense, just like Georgia does. Okay, they're built differently. I'm not saying they're just alike, but Texas has got a really good defense, specifically that secondary. It's sick. I mean, it's really, really, really good. And I think the linebacker position's pretty good. But there is a deficiency, something that we pointed out, Mason, all the way back in July, August. There is a deficiency on the defensive line for Texas whenever they're matched up against the big boys. And that is what it is. They have issues stopping the run, and they have issues running the football. And that was prevalent in this game. Georgia won this game, defense and running the football. And you got to tip your cap to Georgia. That hasn't been a strength for them throughout the season. That's something that's been kind of new. So tip your cap to ETN. He played with broken ribs with a Kevlar vest tonight and scored the game-winning touchdown. Carson Beck goes down at halftime. Obviously, all of you saw that. That looked terrible, Mason. I don't know when Carson Beck's coming back, if he's coming back. I don't know. That looked bad.
Yeah.
It looked real bad. Elbows and shoulders ain't supposed to be like that. Gunnar Stockton, I got to tip my cap to the kid. I thought he died. You texted me. You said you thought he died. I think he did die for just a minute. It scared me to death.
You mentioned elbows aren't supposed to bend that way. Knees aren't supposed to bend that way either. That no. Looked bad on his knee, let alone his head.
At one time, and so believe me, they are not supposed to bend that way. That is not how that's supposed to work, dude. I got to tip my cap to the kid. He was obviously unprepared. We talked about this year. Georgia's schedule has been so damn difficult. They haven't had a chance to get a quarterback in any kind of mop up duty. Mm-hmm. Really? So very, very little. So bless the kid's heart. He was put in a situation. The team rallied around him. And I really liked to see that. We learned some new leaders for Georgia today. Big, big win for Georgia. Mason, I don't know what's going to happen for Georgia in the future. I am a Georgia fan. Y'all all know that. I don't know what's going to happen. Georgia doesn't look like a national championship winning football team, but I don't know because everybody doubted them this week and they came through again. So does their identity change and are they malleable? Can they win in different ways? I don't know. It's yet to be seen, but this team 2024, this is Kirby Smart's best coaching job right here in 2024, in my opinion. Because this has been a bumpy season, man. This has been a really tough season. And Georgia and Kirby Smart and that defensive staff outcoached Steve Sarkisian and them again. And one last thing, and I'll give you the floor. And y'all have to just kind of excuse my French here, but Steve Sarkisian is the biggest pussy ever. He is the biggest pussy. Blaming everyone. He's like he's like not the stepdad. He's like the biological dad that has nothing to do with you but blames you for everything and blames the mom for everything. Right? It's like the psycho co-parent, right? Blames everybody for everything else, can't accept any responsibility. Guys, I got news for you. He was complaining about holding calls. They missed a bunch of holding calls against Texas. They missed a bunch of them because Texas can't block Georgia's defensive line.
Yeah.
They have to hold them. That's the only thing they could do. They were holding on for dear life. It wasn't, a strategy. It was, oh shit, hold on for dear life. And Texas just wasn't good enough. And I don't think they're going to be good enough this season to be able to compete with Georgia. This Texas offense is just it's not what it was last year. Matthew Golden, number 2, he's awesome. He is awesome. And watch out when they get in the playoffs, you got to watch out for that guy. But the film's out now. Gunnar Helm can't even go out on a route because he has to help block. At least whenever they're going against the big boys, when they're playing Arkansas or Mississippi State, they don't have to worry about that. And Gunnar Helm's running around, running routes and things like that. He can't do that whenever you're playing against the big boys, and it's going to present a problem down the road for Texas. This offense has got some issues, just like Georgia's does.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I watched, speaking about Steve Sarkisian being a big pussy, I watched the post-game interview, and he never once credited Georgia. His players didn't credit Georgia. It was all about the mistakes we made and what we did wrong. And I get it. You gotta reflect a little bit and look at what you did to get better. And it is, you're not gonna look at the other team and get better based off of what they did. I thought it was just more finger pointing from Sarkisian in some ways. But moving forward, I mean, you mentioned, is Georgia a championship caliber team this year outside of the SEC? And it's a fair question. They probably won't. I mean, statistically, they probably won't win the national championship, and that's just, I guess, statistically, you would say that Oregon probably won't either. If you're taking one team versus the field, that's kind of how I arrived to that stat. But
and as a Georgia fan, how do you feel about that? Because I'm going to tell you something. I didn't finish my thought on that. I'm happy, brother. I'm happy. Like, the SEC championship made me happy as a Georgia fan today. I didn't think it really would. I didn't really think it would, but it did.
If the season ended today, yeah, I'd be really happy because this didn't look like a team that could win the SEC early on in the season and throughout the entire season, and up at even last week against Georgia Tech. You're thinking, well, this doesn't look like a championship team. However, this was a very emotional game.
Georgia Tech's offense is better than Texas's offense. Go ahead.
Maybe Buster Faulkner's a better offensive coordinator than Steve Sarkisian. And that is something that should probably be looked at because I think he's one of the best in the country and is extremely underrated. Although he's starting to get some looks, but
the refs did it.
He looks like a guy who has at least 1 million pictures in his mom's photo album of him wearing pink polos with the collar pop, like you know what.
He looks like a guy that has a painting of himself naked hanging over his fireplace, and he's like sprawled out on some like fur,
on a bear rug.
Yeah, a bear rug or something. But no, going back to Georgia, this was a very emotional game. As a fan, it was very emotional. The ups and downs. Gunnar Stockton comes in and then leads the team to a touchdown drive. And you're thinking, wow, we just took the lead. How the heck did we get the lead? It didn't make sense, In your head, you're like, we're still losing, but we're up by 4 points. It kind of left me a little bit, beside myself in a way. But it was super emotional to see that and to see the crowd. The crowd was so loud, the offense couldn't even hear themselves, and they had to. The whole team was like, "Yo, y'all gotta chill."
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, there were more Georgia fans than Texas at that game, but you saw the team really rally behind him. You saw the fire, you saw the leadership from a second string quarterback come in, and then you saw him make a bonehead pick and almost cost Georgia the game. I mean, they were in position to kick a field goal and which would have been the game-winning field goal. This game would have never gone to overtime, but nonetheless, this was an emotional game, and it was one of 5 emotional games that Georgia has had this season. What other team in the country has that on their resume to go into the playoffs, and in every game is going to be emotional in the playoffs? So what team has been more tested than Georgia and come out on top more times than not? There's not one. There's not one. Georgia's had 2 losses. They were really, really close against Alabama. That seemed to be a learning lesson for Georgia. The Ole Miss is kind of the anomaly. That's kind of the outlier there, where they just didn't perform at all. Things just never went their way in that game. But my point is, I think Georgia can win a national championship, and it's because of that experience throughout this season that no other team can point to and lean on. No other team had to dig that deep internally and figure out what they're made of, what they're cut from. We saw SMU do it tonight, and it was their first time being tested. Clemson had already had the Georgia loss. They already had a couple other losses, and so they had already been tested. And I think that was a difference in that football game. And I think that Georgia can use that to their advantage. This could be just a gritty, sort of tough mentality type of football program that can win it, barring Carson Beck coming back, because I do think that this team has a huge drop off if Carson Beck is not in the offense. I mean, there's just no denying that. It was a great moment for Gunnar Stockton. If Carson Beck is not going to make his way back, I'm interested to see what he looks like, what Gunnar Stockton looks like with almost a month of practice and preparation running with the ones. Georgia will not play until January 1st, so they've got, again, almost a full month, more than 3 weeks to prepare. And what does this offense look like? Because I saw an offense, I saw the playbook open up. And the question to me is, can Gunnar Stockton continue to make the throws that he needs to make while also running for potentially 100 yards a game? I mean, the quarterback draw was there more times than not tonight, and he was not afraid to put his body on the line. We all saw it. And another interesting point that I wasn't sure when he went out because his helmet flew off. I wasn't sure who was coming back in. I never thought Carson Beck was coming back in. In the post-game press conference, Kirby Smart said, we were considering putting Ryan Puglisi in. So that tells you that Ryan Puglisi, the true freshman, is the third-string quarterback, not the transfer Jaden Rashada, who transferred over from Arizona State. A little bit telling there. If Gunnar Stockton takes another hit like that, assuming that Carson Beck doesn't come back, it'll be the true freshman Ryan Puglisi that we see in the playoffs. So just kind of keep that on the back burner. That's just kind of something to think about, because Gunnar Stockton, as tough as he is, he's not the biggest guy at 6'1", 215. That was great in high school football, where, and you guys don't know about Gunnar Stockton and the lore behind Gunnar Stockton as a high school quarterback, but this guy has passing records and touchdown records in the state of Georgia over Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson. Gunnar Stockton has the most touchdown passes for a quarterback, or just in general in Georgia high school football. The most running touchdowns for a quarterback, which was a Deshaun Watson record that he broke, and the most passing yards for a quarterback throughout his career. So this is a guy who can do it. We just haven't seen him in this sort of spotlight, and so now we're starting to see that. I've heard rumblings through practice saying that he's not there yet. He hasn't progressed yet. But I saw a gamer come out there tonight that I think this team can rally behind, similar to Stetson Bennett. He actually has a pretty similar skill set as Stetson, probably not as fast. But who knows? Maybe Carson starts for the rest of the playoffs, and this is all for naught. But hey, if Gunnar Stockton ends his career at Georgia on that note, and that's the last game he plays at Georgia, and he transfers out next year or whatever, not saying that he should or whatever, but what a way to end it. I mean, absolutely.
No doubt about it. Again, Georgia comes out on top. Georgia, more than likely, I would say 99.9% chance they secure the second seed there, and definitely will have the bye. So congratulations to any Dog fans out there. again, I'm just super tickled about the win, and if the season ended today, Mason, I'd be happy with that SEC championship as a Georgia fan, and the rest of this will be icing on the cake. And Georgia's been playing playoff games since they got 2 losses, and since that game they against Tennessee. So every week's a playoff for Georgia, and that continues, my friend. That only continues now, and now everybody's down to their last loss, right? All right. Let's talk about this Big Ten championship, because this was a real good one too. And I stayed away from betting on this game. Oregon ends up winning this thing 45-37. It looked like Oregon ran away and hid with this thing about 3 different times, right? It seemed like Oregon definitely was hitting the more explosive plays in this game, through the passing game anyway. Those wide receivers for Oregon are just really, really fast twitch, man. I mean, they're really, when they get open space and they get ahead of steam, I mean, it's damn near impossible to tackle them with one of these big guys. It's there's something to deal with. They're very, very fast. Dylan Gabriel, 98% of the time, has got them in the right situation, in the right play at the right time. Oregon offensively, I have no qualms. I really don't. I thought everything looked really, really good for the most part, pretty polished for the most part. There was a couple lulls in the game for the offense, but that's to be expected. I mean, they're not going to score on every possession. Penn State was the big surprise here to me, and this is a game that I think Penn State can definitely hang their hat on, and it's a game that I think they can build on, because here's the deal: you lose, but it's not the end of the world. You're still going to the playoffs. If you lost and then it was just time for a bowl game and guys were hitting the transfer portal and things like that, I feel like this would be kind of a negative ending to what was a successful season. But Penn State's still got a chance here, in a game. Look, they can play with anybody. If they play offense like they did today and they score points like they did today, they can play with anybody. Now, let's talk about what we learned, though, from this game about Oregon and about Penn State. Oregon seems pretty susceptible to the run to me, Mason. I mean, 280 yards on the ground today for Penn State. Holy mackerel. I mean, they just absolutely were bulldozing these guys. And it wasn't only that. I saw missed tackles as well. And I know those backs for Penn State are beasts. I get that. Singleton and Allen are both really, really good, no doubt. But I don't know. We talked about this team early in the season about the middle of that defensive line maybe still lacking that game buster, that run stopper, that just everlasting gobstopper that jumps in the middle, that nose man, that nasty nose man. They don't have it. I don't think they have it. And I feel like that kind of reared its ugly head today. I feel like Penn State, that was right up their alley to be able to pick on something like that. That was the perfect matchup for them. And that's why I think Vegas had this line so close in this game, because they realized Penn State loves to run the football. They got 2 hella backs. They got a good offensive line, and Oregon hasn't really been tested up the middle a whole heck of a lot. Well, they got tested tonight, man, and they failed miserably. Almost 300 yards. That is an absolute bludgeoning. So going forward, this is a great win for Oregon. I don't want anybody to get it twisted, but we're not talking about regular season wins and losses anymore. We're talking about a national championship. And whenever we're talking about the Natty, we're picking things apart, and we're absorbing any bit that we can about these teams. And I learned something about Oregon today offensively. I learned that they can score with anybody in college football offensively. But I also learned that defensively they're a little more porous than what I thought. Penn State, I thought that some of the play calling for Penn State was a little weird at times, Mason. The last interception, I can't really figure out. I know you're one-on-one on the sideline, right? And you know which one I'm talking about, the kind of the bomb over the top that Oregon was able to intercept basically in the game. They ran it out after that and ended the game. It was like 2nd and 3, 2nd and 2. You've ran for 300 yards. What are we doing?
Yeah.
I didn't really get that. So there was a couple of times where the offensive play calling just didn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense to me. Drew Aller still seems to have some moments where his awareness isn't fully developed. It doesn't seem that way. It is that way. I've seen it with my own eyes. His awareness isn't that of exactly a veteran quite yet. He's still growing a little bit, and I think that's to be expected. He's been asked to do more in the offense this year, and I think he's answered the bell for the most part. And I think this was a great showing for Penn State. But as I said, we're talking about winning a national championship here, and uh, while Penn State scored 37 points today, and I think that is awesome, um, Penn State might should have won this game, Mason. Um, with the turnovers, I don't know, man. I feel like one kind of got away from Penn State here. Running for 280 yards, they had Oregon right where they wanted them. I believe, Mason, this is the only game. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's Clemson. Maybe Clemson and SMU kind of went against this trend as well. But up until this game, the team that rushed the ball won every conference championship before this. I was really excited. I was paying attention and watching, and I was thinking, I'm going to get on the show, and every conference champion will have rushed for more yards than their opponent in the conference championship game. That wasn't the case here, and it leads me to believe Penn State, being the outlier there, probably should have won this thing. What do you think, man? It was a great game. Both teams played outstanding. Congratulations to the Ducks. Number one in the country, and they absolutely deserve it. Got gashed today, though.
They did. I came away. I think my overarching takeaway from this game was that Penn State surprised me. I think that Penn State is a team that could actually win the national championship if they continue to play almost like they did today. They've got to shore some things up on defense, and I think that they will. Which I didn't think that going into this game at all. I did not think that Penn State was a national championship contender. So I'm walking away with this thinking, yeah, you just took a team that everybody said was basically head and shoulders above all the other teams throughout the entire regular season. And you took them to the wire and nearly beat them. Like you said, maybe should have beat them. And then on the other side, I look at Oregon and I say, okay, there are some chinks in the armor. We saw them play really their second game of the year, maybe third. If you include the Boise State game, because I do think that Boise State's a really good team, and they took them to the wire as well. But those are kind of my overarching views. Now, why was Oregon struggling to stop the run? One of the things that I noticed, and well, first of all, Penn State's a really good rushing team, so we got to give them their credit. But something that is kind of catching my eye right here, looking through the post-game stat sheet, there were only 14 players on Oregon's team that recorded a tackle on the entire team. There are only 11 that start, but only 14 players record a tackle, which tells me they're playing a lot of their starters for like the entirety of the game. And that, when a team is having success running the football, you talk about the dudes up front getting gassed. I think that's probably has a lot to do with what happened. And credit Penn State for keeping a lot of the same offensive personnel out there, not giving Oregon a chance to rotate and things like that. You saw Penn State, as they were down, start to run with a little bit more pace that we don't normally see. They're kind of running that 2-minute drill, and it was pretty effective for a lot of the game. But that's something that I'm looking at for Oregon and starting to question now. They've got dudes. Their starting 11's really good, but do we know what their depth is? I mean, have they really been tested? Because outside of the Ohio State game, and now I'm interested to go back and look and see what the stats were there. They haven't had to get into their depth. They haven't had to throw their fastball late into games and things like that. They've been pretty vanilla, and they've been coasting to wins. And they're one of the few teams in college football that have been able to do that. Actually, Penn State's really one of those too. In some cases, they played with their food a little bit, kind of like Georgia had. But But yeah, that's to me. I'm looking at the weaknesses for Oregon. It's kind of a weird little circumstance here where we're talking about a team that just won the Big Ten championship, and we're looking at weaknesses first. But that's a credit to Oregon and what they've been able to do throughout the regular season. They're a championship program. And this is what you get. You get nitpicked when you're a championship contender. But heck of a game. Really, one other takeaway, I guess, and this is something that I mentioned in the breakdown, but Tess Johnson, what a phenomenal performance by him. 11 catches, 181 yards, and a tutty. He is a difference maker for this offense. And that's what I said going into this preview. That's why I picked Oregon to win this game, is because you see a different notch on the offense when Tess Johnson plays. The only complaint I have with this game is like, why are we running out of bounds when you got another 3 to 5 yards you could go get? I know he's a slightly built guy and he's just coming off of an injury, but maybe stay in bounds a little bit longer and get those yards. But I thought the running game was pretty effective. They averaged for 4.3 yards per attempt, and then the tight end game got involved too. I mean, outside of Tess Johnson, your leading receivers were both tight ends, in Sadiq, who had 2 catches for 2 touchdowns, and then Terrence Ferguson, who had 3 catches for 1 touchdown. Really just a solid overall balanced game plan for the offense of Oregon. Penn State, credit their offense, but we saw some holes in the Oregon defense as well.
I guess we don't have any Oregon fans that hang out here because we actually like to talk about the game and consider the fact that Oregon could lose a football game. So they all run off whenever we do that. But I wanted to ask one, if there is one watching in quiet and hiding or something. Are y'all tired of Gary Danielson yet?
I think Brad Nessler is tired of Gary Danielson. There were a couple of times where he was just like at one point they show a replay. Gary Danielson is commenting on the replay, and he's like, on this touchdown pass, and he broke down the play, and then Brad Nessler was like, that was not a touchdown pass, that was a first down pass, but I see your point. It was like super snarky about it.
Yeah. Well,
if y'all
don't know, Gary Danielson is obviously the announcer for CBS. CBS has done they did SEC games. It was the SEC game of the week every Saturday at 3:30 for years, right? Well, now they've moved over to the Big Ten. And so I joke and say, Oregon, are you tired of him yet? Because every time Penn State did something, you know how he does. He for whatever reason, he gets one team or the other that he gets real excited about. And I don't know, it seems like he's picking sides or something, but I guess he's not. He's just an annoying old man. But I'm sure they're tired of that. I also wanted to ask the Oregon fans how much Dylan Gabriel was making from Copperfit for those socks, and how much does that help him with his varicose veins? And does he wear them while he drives his minivan? Those were my questions. So, any of you Oregon fans, your report to the comment section and let me know. I'd like to know the answers to those questions. Oregon wins 45-37, retained the number 1 spot. Penn State showed me a lot here, Mason. Penn State showed me
absolutely
a lot. So congratulations to Penn State because, like I said, I think this is something you can build on. I really, really, really do. And I know we got a couple of Penn State fans in here. So congratulations to you guys. I mean, look, you could have went out there and just got your ass whooped, right? And that would have been a lot worse. At least this was a good game. It was respectable. Nobody's questioning whether Penn State should be in the playoff at this point. And that's – I don't want anybody to get in that's, like, controversial, that you know what I mean? Like, if somebody gets in the playoff, I want to know that they deserve to be there, and I feel like Penn State deserves to be there. And I think it was awesome that Penn State made the Big Ten championship game today because I don't know that Ohio State could have done what they did today offensively, just to be honest with you, Mason. I think Oregon probably would have killed Ohio State today. But Penn State was able to answer back, and I think Penn State's got a better offense than Ohio State does at this point. I just needed to see it in a game and see it get tested a little bit. And I feel good about that. They're at least as good, if not better, than Ohio State's offense, in my opinion. Um, Ohio State just boasts that really solid defense. That's what they're the tool they're going to be wielding going into the playoffs. Um, we already touched on Clemson, SMU at the very beginning of the show, just because of the way our conversation was kind of directed. So let's go to that Big 12 championship game, because that thing ended up having a lot of ramifications. And I'll answer the question everybody's probably got. I know people were Googling it because I went to Google it. By the way, Arizona State wins 45-19, absolute blowout. And I did the research for you here. I wrote it down in my notes, folks. And no, Cam Scatterbo does not have Tourette's. That was not what he was doing. Did anybody else notice that? I had to Google it because he shakes his head every 5 seconds when he's got that helmet on. And it's something to do with the way he sweats, and he's done made a habit out of doing it, and he, like, gets this cheek pads where they come off of his sweaty cheeks. But next time you watch him, it's really weird. It's really weird, and apparently it's a thing because I Googled it, and it was, like, the first thing that popped up, Cam Scatterbo Tourette's. Or, no, it was Cam Scatterbo tick. They called it a tick.
That's funny.
He's a beast. I told you guys last week, if you haven't watched Cam Scatterbo, and I know some people haven't had the opportunity or don't really watch Big 12 football. Some people don't. I do. He's an absolute treat, and he's a freak. And the yards after contact are unbelievable. I mean, they're just absolutely unbelievable. Iowa State had chances in this football game to stay in it. They couldn't tackle the man. I mean, they just flat out couldn't tackle him. Not to mention Arizona State, we didn't mention it going in last week, but they had, or I didn't mention it or didn't realize it. Maybe you did, Mason, and I was, you know how we do, responding to comments and stuff during the live show. So sometimes I miss stuff that you say. But with Tyson, the leading receiver, being out for Arizona State, there was really a lot of questions going in. Like, what is Arizona State going to do? He had 75 receptions this year, right? The very next best receiver had 35 receptions this season. I mean, that's huge drop off. Guys stepped up. That guy with the weird last name, they were saying that he was in line to redshirt. And by the way, guys, I learned something new today. If you're redshirting, right, say you've already played in your 4 games this year, postseason doesn't count. So you can play in postseason games, and it doesn't count against your eligibility. So if you have a player on your team that was a 5-star and you were going to redshirt him and he's already played in 4 games, that was the case for this guy. He wasn't a 5-star, but they were saving his red shirt. This doesn't count against him. He still gets to redshirt. So kudos to him. He had an unbelievable game. Levitt does not look like a young quarterback. He looks way more experienced. He's wise beyond his years. There's no doubt about that. Arizona State, they're going to have some of these guys come back next year, including Levitt, if they can survive the transfer portal. But before all that happens, they've got a playoff run to attend to. And with all the shakeup that's gone on, they're going to have a bye in the first round. So congratulations to Sparky. Absolutely took all the spark out of Iowa State. Just an absolute thumping of Iowa State in that one, 45-19. What were your thoughts, Mason? Arizona State has a formula that looks repeatable to me. It doesn't seem like anything was real fluky about this. It seems like what they've got going on is repeatable. How do they match up going against, some bigger offensive and defensive lines? I think that's a question that, we're going to have to answer over the next few weeks. But they're one of the hottest teams in the country. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, no doubt. This was a absolute bludgeoning. I don't think the score even really indicates how bad it was. 45-19 is the end there. The end score there, but Arizona State completely took their foot off the gas. I mean, they didn't score a single point in the fourth quarter. They were absolutely coasting. Jeff Sims got in. I mean, that's how bad it was. But the difference in this game to me was, first of all, Cam Scatterboo. I mean, he just absolutely put the team on his back. The guy is, to me, he's the second best runner back in the country behind Ashton Genty, and I would sit down with you and listen to an argument for him being the best runner back in the country, who was plagued a little bit by injury and just doesn't have the stats necessarily, I guess. But he also plays in a Power Four conference, so anyways, I don't want to make that case because I do think that Genty is a better running back, but Cam Scatterboo is pretty dang awesome. I was watching this game. I had drill today in the Army National Guard, and we had the game up on the big screen. I had the HDMI plugged into my laptop, and I was trying to like pay attention to it, but I've got like senior NCOs in there with me who are, trying to make sure we're doing some work and not just like dicking off the whole time. And so I was trying to like also work at the same time, but
I said our tax dollars at work. I had myself muted, but I said our tax dollars hard at work. Thank you, Mason.
There you go. There
Thank
you
for your
go.
service.
But it was funny to me because, I mean, a lot of the soldiers in my unit, they're not big college football fans, and I'm kind of hogging the TV, really. And they're all watching Cam Scatterboo, go, and they're oohing and awing, and I'm just like, yeah, this is kind of what he does. Honestly, this is a pretty normal day at the office for Mr. Scatterboo. And he was the big player in this game, obviously. And I think Arizona State now is just in a really good position. And I would be really surprised if they're not in the top four. I don't think that they were able to leapfrog or are going to be able to leapfrog Boise State and get the 3 spot. I don't know that it matters a ton. I think the 4 spot is going to be fine for them. They're getting a bye. Kenny Dillingham takes his team from 3-9 last year to the college football playoffs, which is just incredible. By the way, did you know? So I was looking this up for some reason while I was watching the game, but Kenny Dillingham gets paid $3.95 million a year. He gets, for every win over 8 wins, he gets an extra $200,000 per win. He made, I want to say it was like $400,000 for winning the Big 12. It might have been more than that. And then also another $1.135 million for a college football playoff appearance. So Kenny Dillingham absolutely racked up this today. I mean, he just absolutely racked up. So I can't say enough about him and the job that he's been able to do at Arizona State to win what was Coach of the Year. Yeah, absolutely. Depending on, I guess kind of depending on what Indiana does, if they're able to win a playoff game, I think that would go a long way. But yeah, I'm looking at Arizona State moving forward. I don't think they are going to have a lot of transfers out. I think they're getting a lot of transfers into the program. Kenny Dillingham, I don't think he's going anywhere because he's an Arizona State guy. Graduated from there. He's an alumni, and now I think that he is going to kind of run the Big 12 for a minute here, and has got the base of players to do it with. I really like you said, Sam Levitt. They're going to have to go find somebody to replace Cam Scatterboo, obviously, and I don't think you really replace him, but you should catch the eyes of some talented running backs moving forward. Yeah, we'll see if this is the new powerhouse program of the Big 12 now that Oklahoma and Texas got out of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got another one that we're going to talk about here, guys. We got the Mountain West Championship game we're going to talk about here in just a minute, but I was just reading through some of the comments, and let's see, Double O'Neill, I think Clemson 4. Do you really think so? Because they've got Clemson below Arizona State already, and then Arizona State had the most decisive conference championship win by far. I mean, it wasn't even all of them were close. I mean, Boise State, I guess you could say they kind of, ran away and hid with it, right? But I don't know, man. I don't see Clemson being number 4 and getting a bye with 3 losses. I mean, that's the first ranked team that Clemson's beat this year, right? That's still ranked at this point because even Pitt ended up being 7-5. So, you know, um, Double O'Neill says Clemson played SMU, which is a higher ranked team than Arizona versus Iowa State. So yes, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I still think Alabama gets in over SMU. Says Peanut Butter Posse. I sure don't hope so after this because look here, and we didn't really. I don't think I explained this real well, but if they let Alabama get in there over SMU, what's to stop a team from just denying an invitation to a conference championship in the future? What kind of precedents are we setting in college football if we put Alabama in there and penalize SMU, very clearly penalize SMU, who's ranked higher than Alabama at this point? It'd be different if SMU was never ranked higher than Alabama. You know what I'm saying? And Alabama was ahead of them the whole time. And then SMU lost. Then it's acceptable, right? But I don't know. I feel like the committee kind of painted themselves in a corner with that one, and therefore I don't see SMU getting left out after a last second field goal there in that game after the Mountain that unbelievable comeback. I mean that doesn't just happen a whole heck of a lot in conference championship games, especially. So I thought SMU showed enough today to be able to get in. I see Ray Charles. How can you? I guess maybe you're listening on podcast, huh? Ray Charles, he's got somebody typing for him. SMU for sure should be in over Alabama. I agree with you, Ray. Even you can see that. My Mac, but they let Alabama in for FSU. But Alabama won the SEC championship, though. That's the difference. Alabama doesn't have a championship, and it was really bullshit last week, guys. One of the stats they brought up was wins over teams over 500. Like what is that? So a team's over 500, and that's the watermark. I don't know. They'll come up with any stat that they can, to show why they were correct, right? And that's the part of the committee that I don't love, and I don't love that Michigan athletic director. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't like him necessarily being in there, but I think for the most part they've done a decent job in most cases, but and it's all worked itself out, and that's why I say that they didn't paint themselves into too many corners, which you can do with these brackets and seeding and things like that. Okay, and SMU just lost their championship. You're contradicting yourself. Well, no, the point is you're not penalizing teams that are playing an extra game. Alabama's sitting on their ass this weekend while SMU played their ass off. So why does Alabama get rewarded for that? Tell me, explain that to me. And I'm not making this up. I mean, that's what the committee has done in years past. They don't penalize teams typically. Now, if SMU would have gotten absolutely blown out today, I feel like that'd be a different story. But they were right there in the thick of this thing till the very last second. So, yeah, I'm not contradicting myself. Alabama didn't play and lose a conference championship today, and I'm saying they don't deserve to be in because of that. They sat on their ass. SMU, Alabama needs to win their games. You should have beat Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think that the important thing to realize here is that the committee already put SMU above Alabama. and they didn't get blown out. I mean, it was a really close game that they faced against Clemson. Look, I'm all for the games that you play should matter. The quality wins that you have should supersede the wins and losses, if that makes sense. So, Alabama's win over Georgia was very nice. That was a great win. That should be heavily weighted, and I do think that Alabama technically should get in. If we're picking the best 12 teams, I think that Alabama should get in over SMU. I think that they would beat SMU, but that's not what college football wants, right?
Exactly. Well,
as a whole.
Yeah,
that's what SEC fans want, because SEC teams have the toughest schedules. Everybody knows that. But across the country, college football fans as a whole, they don't want the strength of schedule argument to be made, especially if they're not in the SEC. And that's kind of just where we're at. I don't really feel one way or another about it. But I'm kind of a purist in a sense that I think that the games that you play should matter. In a sense, where like wins and losses should be weighed heavily, but also, man, to say that SMU schedule versus Alabama schedule is the same, and just count wins and losses, that's not fair either. So I'm not really sure what the answer is there, but we're just saying that these teams are going to get in based off what the committee has said, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. We're not saying that this is how we would have it necessarily.
SJ00, what do you mean by that? SEC needs to make 4 conference games a year then to make it fair. I don't know what does that mean?
Well, because it would make the schedule easier, I guess, if they played the rest of their games out of conference.
Oh, make it easier. I got you. Well, I mean, I don't think Alabama needed an easier schedule. They just should have beat a 6-6 Vandy team, and they certainly should have beat a 6-6 Oklahoma team. So, yeah, SMU, I get it. SMU doesn't have the top 25 wins. Their schedule didn't permit it. I get it. I get that part. But SMU also didn't lose to a couple of unranked teams, You're right, Mason. I agree with you 100% what you just said. This is what we agreed to as a unit, as a college football world. You can't go changing the rules because you don't like the outcome all of a sudden. Now, later down the road, I think it should be changed. We talked about on this very show, automatic bids suck. Automatic bids are not the way. Arizona State, let's be real, probably shouldn't have a bye, right? But they're going to get one because that's the format that we're in. It is very interesting. I have to tip my cap on that aspect. It's fun. This has been a lot of fun. Now, if you're that one team on the outside looking in, maybe it's not as fun. But that's what the college football playoffs is all about. At least we got 12 instead of 4. Probably going to 16. We need to do away with the automatic bids. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It needs to be the 12 or 16 highest ranked teams. That's the way it needs to be. That's the way it needs to be. Before we go any further, guys, y'all hit that like button for me real quick. There's 84 of y'all in here. We're just a couple of super fans just like you guys. Help us out. We're just trying to keep the lights on over here at First and Long College Football Show, and a thumbs up would help a ton doing that. So I really do appreciate y'all tuning in, trying to filter through these comments as we go. We're going to talk real quick about the Boise State, the Mountain West Championship, considering Boise State has found themselves as, in that third spot. I believe Boise is going to be in that third spot. They're going to have that bye. Great atmosphere out at Albertson Stadium this past Friday. Really enjoyed watching this game. Just some things that I walked away with, Mason, and very first thing off the top, and I'll just throw it out there. Ashton Jeanty deserves the Heisman. I don't think Travis Hunter should get the Heisman, personally. I think there's other awards that better describe Travis Hunter. Colorado is irrelevant. We're in the postseason. They're irrelevant. Ashton Jeanty is the focal point of a national championship contending team. I think he deserves it. Look at what he's done this season. I was just looking this past Friday at his numbers versus all the other Heisman winners that have been running backs over the last couple of decades. It's unbelievable. He blows them all out of the water. All out of the water. He deserves to win the Heisman, in my opinion. I know he'll be at the ceremony. Does he win it? Probably not. Travis Hunter probably ends up winning that thing. It's been a long time since anybody. I think it was Roger Staubach or something was the last guy to win it that wasn't in like one of the power conferences or whatever. I don't really care about that. I think Ashton Genty should win it. But I came away with that game with some other takeaways as well. Boise State's lines of scrimmage are a little better than what I thought, I think. I thought that they played with their hair on fire. UNLV, their offense couldn't get anything going. Really just could not get anything going with this defensive line being disruptive. I thought Williams, I thought they made a lot of really bad decisions. The quarterback for UNLV, he seemed so poised throughout the whole season, and then he got to this game, and man, he just froze up. And he had a terrible game. You got to give props to the Boise State defense. They did their thing. I thought that, like I said, I thought the defensive line played really, really well in this game. Probably, maybe the best I've seen them play this season. I would venture to say. You Boise State fans, you let me know. Y'all would know better than I would, but I just thought this was an impressive show in here. I would have liked to see Boise State maybe score another touchdown there at some point in that game, but I mean, 21-7, couple of touchdown victory there is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of, especially considering the conditions. The air was just thick as snot. It was cold as hell. And I also came away with some thoughts on Maddox Madsen. He can throw dimes every once in a while. That one where the wide receiver was kind of cutting to the corner of the end zone, and I mean, that guy wasn't open. He threw him open. And like in his name that his mother gave him, he did his best Greg Maddox right there. And he put that sucker in the black, right where he wanted it. That was pretty crazy precision there. I believe he was on the move when he threw that. I mean, that was very impressive. So Maddox Madsen can make some pretty impressive throws. He's a gamer. So you got a gamer at quarterback. I think you got a good O-line. I know you got the best running back in the country. That's not debatable. Fill in the blanks. What else? How far can this Boise State team go? We'll see. We'll see. I'm not ready to say that, they're just one and done. We'll see who they end up getting matched with, Mason. What did you think about this one? Boise State wins at 21-7, and they are the Mountain West champs.
Yeah, this game went about the way that I thought it would, honestly. Ashton Genty had another great game, more than 200 yards on the ground. We were wondering if he could get to 300 and pass Barry Sanders' record for single season rushing yards. And, we might have to wait for this playoff game and hope that he can get over 100 to see that, because I want to see that just as a college football fan. But the Boise State offense definitely sputtered in the second half. They don't put up a single point in the second half. It seemed like the game was already over with the way that the defense was playing against UNLV. But I did see Maddox Madsen. You mentioned the highs. He had some low moments too, where he was putting the ball in harm's way. Almost had a few interceptions really that the defenders just couldn't quite corral. But they get through it. The offense looked pretty good, at least in that first half. Had some moments again in the second half. I thought UNLV might sneak back in with the stops that they were getting, but their offense just was not able to handle Boise State, and the conditions didn't help. This team that's used to playing in a dome in Las Vegas, going up to Idaho in early December to play the Broncos, it wasn't going to work out, and I kind of told you that it wasn't going to work out. The other thing that I pointed out was that this Boise State defensive line has been playing really good as of late. They've gotten better since they had faced UNLV earlier in the season, and we saw what happened in that game. Haj Malik Willis, he's a great quarterback, but he relies on his legs and not so much that he can't pass the ball. I'm not saying he's not a balanced quarterback as a dual threat, but he needs to be able to have a lot of success running the football because that gets the defenders and the safeties kind of moving up, and the threat of him running changes the defense up a pretty good bit. He wasn't able to run, and the Boise defense was pretty much able to bring 4, maybe 5 occasionally, and get pressure and get home to Haj Malik Willis and sack him a couple times and really just keep him off balance throughout the entire game. They kind of just smothered him, and this UNLV offense was just not able to get it done. Only 110 yards passing on the day. They did have 217 yards on the ground, but 2 of those, Kylan James had 2 carries for 95 yards that just kind of skewed the stat line there. But credit Boise's defense for bowing up when they needed to, really, and getting them the win. I thought the first half it was kind of all about the offense. Defense was looking good, but some of that had to do with the crowd noise, and credit the Boise State fans for showing up and showing out too. But then the second half, it was really on Boise State's defense to go win them the football game, and they did just that. This is a really talented program. I'm excited to see them in the playoffs. I'm hoping that they can get a favorable matchup. And, I really wanted to see Arizona State and Boise State in the first round of the playoffs. Like that would be really cool. It's obviously not going to happen, but that game seems like a really good matchup. And we would get to see Cam Scatterbo versus Ashton Genty, which would be just an absolute headliner of a college football game.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people talking about Genty and his NFL prospects. I'm no NFL guy. I solely concentrate on college football, but I did learn a lot this week on Genty about the fact that he invests a lot of his money that he's made right back into his body. He does the whole like Tom Brady thing for real. Like I'm not making that up. Like he does he like elongates his muscles with like deep tissue massages and like does the cryogenic freezing shit that LeBron does. Like he invests a lot of his money back into his body. And
I think, and I don't know this for sure, but I would be surprised if he doesn't model a lot of his game in what Derrick Henry does. He seems like a similar back. His stance is actually pretty similar in the backfield to Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry obviously is doing something right when it comes to longevity in the game. The guy's still the best running back in the league, and he's like 36 or something. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Ray Charles, what did you think about the Texas game today? I see you're a Texas fan. I'm curious. We don't get a ton of Texas fans on here because I'm kind of hard on Texas. The Texas fans came down hard on me the first time Georgia and Texas matched up. They came down pretty hard on me online, and because
you said Georgia would win.
I picked Georgia to win the game, God forbid, and they did. And then now I picked Georgia again this week, and they won again. But this time, the Texas fans didn't come and talk shit in my comment section. Last time, I went back to screenshot them after the game, the regular season matchup, and everybody had deleted them. Ray Charles said our kicker better hit the portal, laugh my ass off. Who are you talking about? You talking about it, the kicker? That dude's scary as shit looking, isn't he? God
Bert
dang.
Auburn. I saw College Football Reddit tweeted out that it said Auburn doesn't show up for a Georgia game once again. It's the kicker's name's Bert Auburn.
Ray Charles said we had like 100 penalty yards and missed 2-3 kicks today. Yeah, I know it, man. The penalties were just an absolute killer. There's no doubt about that.
I mean, Texas kind of won that game. I mean, they definitely should have won that game. I mean, they looked like the better team throughout most of that football game, but they didn't capitalize when they needed to.
Gave up a bunch of sacks. I mean, Georgia's defense kicked that ass. I mean, look, Texas is going to get their yards and stuff, but that's been the problem with Texas all year, though, Mason. They get the yards, they don't score the points against the good teams they play, which hasn't been many. They have a hard time in the red zone. There's something missing. We've talked about it over and over. There's just something missing with that offense right now. I don't know what it is. And maybe Gunnar Helm is that red zone guy, and you're not able to see him a whole heck of a lot because he's trying to block. Georgia just blitzes the ever living shit out of Texas when they play them. We as Georgia fans, I remember when Kirby first started, the whole mantra was what Oregon's doing right now: rush 3, try to win with 3 or 4, right, and only blitz when we really, really have to. Kirby throws that out the window when we play Texas. So there's something that Kirby sees with Texas that he is just ready to roll the dice. Ray Charles, #1 recruiting class, including stealing Georgia's top prospect from their state.
Second best prospect in the state. Georgia got the #1 in Elijah Griffin. So he was going to be our second best defensive tackle, but that was a huge loss for Georgia, and we would have had the #1 class had he ended up signing with Georgia. Thought we had him. Georgia had been recruiting this kid since 8th grade, and Texas came in and dropped a bag, and I don't blame him. He took the money. I mean, that's how it goes sometimes.
Too bad he couldn't play today, though, huh? Maybe y'all could have stopped the run a little bit. Texas is the future of the conference. Well, right now they're the past, buddy. Georgia's the champion of this conference. Texas will continue to be good. They're going to continue to recruit. Just got to be a little quicker than that. You're just not there yet. You'll get there one day, kiddo. All right, y'all. I appreciate you watching. That's about it for tonight, huh, Mason? And no show tomorrow. We're going to be back on Tuesday, right? Is that what we're going to shoot for?
We will do a show tomorrow, a quick show to recap the college football playoff release. That they'll do that tomorrow. So they'll release their rankings tomorrow.
That's right. That's right.
We will we'll talk about that. I think it comes on at 7, but I'll have to check it. Y'all probably know better than we do. As soon as that ends, we'll be going live.
Double O'Neill says noon. Is that right?
Well, I will not be on. I will be working. I will be back at drill. But we will have a show tomorrow reacting to it. So
yeah,
I hope that y'all will join us.
We'll get on tomorrow evening, guys. Just y'all go eat your dinner, and then come get on First and Long College Football Show. We'll be on after dinner. Hey, everybody's saying good show. Good show to you guys. This show wouldn't be worth the shit if we didn't have you guys in the comment section hanging out with us. So I appreciate y'all coming and kicking it with us. We do it for you guys. So I'm glad that you enjoyed it. And I'm glad that college football just provided us again with an amazing weekend, because that was so much fun. I just can't get over it. I mean, seriously, it tickles me. That was a whole heck of a lot of fun. All of the games starting on Friday. We got a bunch more football to watch. I hope y'all all consider hitting that subscribe button, hit the like button on your way out, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, guys.